The world almost ended today, and the man who saved it got yelled at by his boss. On September 26, 1983, Soviet officer Stanislov Petrov saw his system flash "Nuclear strike incoming." Protocol was crystal clear: retaliate instantly with nuclear weapons. But his gut said it was a glitch. He disobeyed direct military orders, reported a system malfunction instead, and waited, sweating bullets as the minutes ticked by like hours. He was right. It was a false alarm caused by sunlight reflecting off clouds. He saved billions of lives, prevented World War III, but was he celebrated as a hero? Absolutely not. He was reprimanded for not filling out his logbook correctly and forced into early retirement. He died in poverty, largely unknown.
Japan's government let 5,000 of its own people drown because asking for international help was considered shameful to national honor. On September 26, 1959, Typhoon Vera, one of the strongest storms in recorded history, slammed into Japan with devastating force. Entire cities were completely submerged underwater. Families were trapped on rooftops, screaming for help. But as the death toll mounted horrifically, the Japanese government refused international aid offers for precious hours, obsessed with maintaining national pride and avoiding the appearance of weakness. While officials debated optics and saving face, families literally drowned in their own homes. It's a horrifying example of a repeating historical pattern. When national pride becomes more important than human life, ordinary people always pay the ultimate price. From Hurricane Katrina's delayed response to COVID-19's politicization, we see governments fail their citizens for the sake of image management. Is national pride ever worth a single human life?
The Queen of England personally knighted the world's most successful pirate for being really good at stealing Spanish gold. On September 26, 1580, Francis Drake returned to England after sailing around the entire world in his ship, the Golden Hind. His vessel was literally overflowing with stolen Spanish treasure, enough precious metals to pay off England's entire national debt twice over. Was he arrested for piracy and theft? Absolutely not. He was celebrated as a national hero. Queen Elizabeth I personally boarded his ship and knighted him on the deck, making him Sir Francis Drake. He was basically a state-sponsored terrorist, a government-approved pirate who got incredibly rich by robbing his country's enemies on the high seas. This story reveals a timeless pattern. Your terrorist is my freedom fighter, depending entirely on which side you're on.
When the bubonic plague hit London, the rich fled to their luxurious country estates and literally locked the poor inside their homes to die alone. In 1665, as the Great Plague peaked around September 26th, London's wealthy elite immediately abandoned the city for their safe countryside mansions. But what happened to the poor who couldn't escape? They were brutally sealed inside their houses by government order, with bright red crosses painted on their doors, marking them for death. If one person in a house got sick, the entire family was left to starve or die together in quarantine. It was a calculated act of class warfare, disguised as public health policy. Guards were posted to prevent escape. Imagine being trapped, hearing your family members dying one by one, knowing help would never come. The sheer cruelty of it is almost incomprehensible.
An entire army got so drunk celebrating a victory they hadn't actually won yet that their enemies slaughtered them in their sleep, like sheep. On September 26, 1371, a massive Serbian army was perfectly positioned to crush the Ottoman forces at the Maritsa River. Victory seemed absolutely certain, inevitable even. So confident were they of their upcoming triumph, they spent the entire night drinking heavily and celebrating their guaranteed victory. But the clever Ottomans launched a surprise night raid on the completely drunken, unconscious camp. It was a total massacre. The Serbian king and his brother were brutally killed, and their entire army was systematically annihilated while they slept off their celebration. It's a brutal lesson in a pattern as ancient as warfare itself. Hubris kills more armies than enemy swords. Overconfidence and celebrating too early have led to some of the most devastating military defeats in human history.
Julius Caesar built an entire temple to his divine ancestor Venus, just to justify his scandalous affair with the Egyptian queen Cleopatra. In 46 BC, on September 26th, Caesar dedicated a lavish, expensive temple to Venus Genetrix, the mythical goddess he boldly claimed as his family's divine founder. The real reason behind this religious theater? He was having a very public, politically damaging affair with Cleopatra, the exotic Egyptian queen, and desperately needed to wrap their relationship in a respectable cloak of divine approval. By linking his family bloodline directly to the gods themselves, he made his scandalous personal life seem like part of a grand, mythic destiny ordained by heaven. It's a classic political move, a cynical pattern that repeats endlessly throughout history. When powerful men are caught red-handed in major scandals, they immediately use religion and patriotism to change the subject and distract the public.
The very first American soldier killed in Vietnam was shot in the back by the exact same allies we were supposedly there to help and protect. On September 26, 1945, OSS officer Lieutenant Colonel A. Peter Dewey was assassinated in Saigon by Vietnamese nationalist fighters. The tragic irony? He was mistaken for a French colonial oppressor and murdered by the very people he was sent to support against colonialism. The U.S. government shamefully covered up the embarrassing details for decades, completely unwilling to admit that our first casualty in that long, tragic war was the direct result of friendly fire and a fundamental misunderstanding of the complex conflict. This story reveals a dark, repeating pattern in American foreign policy. We consistently stumble blindly into incredibly complex conflicts without understanding the local dynamics, often creating the very enemies who end up killing our soldiers.
One of the world's greatest architectural treasures was deliberately blown up as mere collateral damage in a completely pointless territorial war. On September 26, 1687, the magnificent Parthenon in Athens, which had stood majestically for over 2,000 years as a testament to human achievement, was utterly destroyed in seconds. The Ottoman Turks, who controlled Athens, were using the ancient temple to store massive amounts of gunpowder. The attacking Venetians knew this perfectly well. They deliberately fired a mortar directly into the building, causing a massive explosion that ripped the irreplaceable temple apart forever. It was a calculated, cold-blooded act of cultural destruction for a minor, temporary military advantage. This tragic event perfectly demonstrates a heartbreaking, repeating pattern throughout human history: the systematic destruction of irreplaceable cultural heritage in the name of war and conquest.
America's largest mass execution in history was the direct result of sham trials that lasted less than 5 minutes each, with no lawyers allowed. On September 26, 1862, following the brutal Dakota War, a military commission began systematically trying hundreds of Native American men for war crimes. The trials were a complete farce, a mockery of justice. The accused had absolutely no legal representation. The evidence presented was flimsy at best, and the entire proceedings were often over in mere minutes. 303 men were sentenced to hang in what amounted to legalized lynching. President Lincoln, genuinely horrified by the injustice, personally reviewed every single case and courageously commuted most of the death sentences, but 38 innocent men were still executed. It's a horrifying example of a repeating pattern throughout American history. Rushed, vengeful justice, systematically targeting minority groups after any conflict.
The famous Glorious Revolution wasn't actually about freedom or religion at all. It was a hostile corporate takeover funded by Dutch bankers protecting their investments. On September 26, 1688, the City Council of Amsterdam secretly agreed to fund Prince William of Orange's military invasion of England with massive loans. Why would they risk war? Because the English king, James II, was directly threatening their profitable financial interests and trade monopolies. They cleverly packaged the invasion as a noble quest for Protestant religious freedom, but it was really about protecting their business investments and securing England's economic and military power for their own financial ends. This story reveals a hidden, repeating pattern throughout history. Many of the great revolutions celebrated in textbooks were actually coups driven by wealthy economic elites protecting their money. It's a crucial reminder to always follow the money trail behind major political changes.